This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Janet is away tonight. Sweeping changes to land use rules could make it easier for developers to build more housing in Winnipeg. Ottawa has made the changes a requirement for cities to access millions in federal funding. Winnipeg councillors debated the plan today, and CBC's Cameron McLean joins us live to tell us more. Now, Cameron, what's the latest from City Hall?
Mayor Scott Gillingham says the city needs to loosen zoning rules to get nearly $200 million from Ottawa's Housing Accelerator Fund. And today, he brought the federal recommendations to the Executive Policy Committee. After a long list of delegates, both in favor and opposed, the committee passed the proposal. Multiplexes up to 4 units and 4-story apartments like these could become more common in Winnipeg. The changes would allow up to 4 units on a single lot anywhere in the city, and up to 4 stories within 800 meters of frequent transit routes. Residents like Ray Hessline raised alarm that the plan would take away the right to appeal developments.
The right of appeal of these variances is the only means by which residents could try to improve the infill.
Others, like Brian Pilcott, cheered on the proposal.
Cities grow, change, evolve over time. What this is doing is to say, what it can grow and change over time into is expanded a little bit.
The plan divided councillors. Some, like Waverley West councillor Janice Lukes, enthusiastically supported it.
We have to be bold in what we are doing going forward.
Others, like St. Vital councillor Brian Mays, have vocally opposed it.
I just think that this is a very flawed process, and I think it's very top-down from the federal government.
Mayor Scott Gillingham tried to ease some concerns about how quickly change would come.
So it's not like we would adopt something today that would permit what the federal government wants us to permit, and then suddenly overnight, the city would be filled with 4-story fourplexes everywhere. That's simply not the case.
Other cities had their funding approved after making the changes. Calgary today received more than $200 million. Now, the committee voted on the proposal just about 15 minutes ago. The proposal passed by a vote of 5-1, with Brian Mays voting in opposition. The proposal will now go on to council for a final vote next Thursday. Brittany?
All right, thank you so much. Our Cameron McLean live in the newsroom tonight. A 20-year-old man from Brampton, Ontario, has been identified as the victim of a weekend homicide, and a teenager has been arrested. Police were called to the house in the 500 block of Bannatyne on Sunday night. The man was pronounced dead at the scene, and a male youth was also found with a gunshot wound. He was taken to hospital in stable condition. Now police have charged a 15-year-old boy with manslaughter, criminal negligence causing death, and possessing a restricted firearm. Officers are asking anyone with video surveillance of the area at the time of the shooting to call police or Crime Stoppers. A Winnipeg woman says she's breathing a sigh of relief after a Toronto jury found Peter Nygard guilty of 4 counts of sexual assault. Serena Hicks says she too was assaulted by the former fashion mogul, but no charges were ever laid. Now she wants to see an inquiry called by the new premier in Manitoba. I spoke with her yesterday.
I am Serena Hicks. I'm a victim/survivor. I'm somewhere in between. And Peter Nygard viciously attacked me and sexually assaulted me. But my name is Serena Hicks, and this is who I am.
For Serena Hicks, those words have power because for 3 decades, she never spoke them.
This was a secret I was going to keep all the way to my grave. I was never, ever going to say it.
Hicks says the former fashion mogul raped her at one of his retail outlets in Winnipeg where she worked. She went to police in 2020, but Peter Nygard was never charged in her case. She says the guilty verdict in Toronto brings some vindication.
I'm so happy, and also heartbroken that it took this long, it took this many women coming forward.
His son Kai has been a vocal advocate for the victims for years. He says justice is finally being served.
And that he has to actually now sit and think about what he's done.
He says he locked eyes with his father when the guilty plea came down.
For me, it was emotional. But again, I'd like to stress, there are so many survivors out there who this is their day.
Nygard was acquitted on 2 charges. To that woman, Hicks has a message.
Oh gosh, don't make that feel like it's any less. Because we know, we believe. It doesn't matter what that damn court system says. We believe you.
In Winnipeg, 8 women came forward, including Hicks. Nygard will stand trial in one of those cases, and Hicks says she has all of their support.
Ours aren't going to be heard, but I will love you. I will hold you. I'll just be there. I'll hold your hand. I'll bring you coffee. Tell me what you need. I'll be there.
Hicks is also calling on Premier Wapkanu to open an inquiry into Nygard and what happened here in Manitoba.
A spokesperson for the Premier says the NDP is committed to supporting survivors as they come forward with allegations. But they say it's critical to not jeopardize a possible conviction or stand in the way of the justice system holding those responsible accountable. So they will allow the judicial process to continue. A northern Manitoba First Nation is mourning a community member who fought in the Russia-Ukraine war. Chief Maureen Brown of the Pasquiat Cree Nation says Austin Lathland-Bercier went to fight with the Ukrainian army last year. She says his family received word of his death on Monday. Global Affairs Canada has not released any information about the death. Brown says flags in the community have been lowered and there will be a service to honor him. The committee voted on the zoning changes about 15 minutes ago, and it passed 5-1 with Mays voting against it. The federal government has transferred $194 million to Manitoba under the Disaster Financial Assistance Agreement. Most of the money covers damage incurred during spring flooding in 2022. That was the year of a record flood on the Winnipeg River, a major flood on the Red River, and heavy damage from the Fisher River at Peguis First Nation. The rest of the cash covers storms and flooding dating back to 2014. A gift fit for a king. As King Charles III celebrates his 75th birthday today, the first Canadian coins featuring his profile were revealed by the Royal Canadian Mint. A portrait of the late Queen Elizabeth II has graced coins since 1953, but the King's moniker will replace his mother's on new pressings. Marnie LeMay is president and CEO of the Royal Canadian Mint. She says Canadians will have time to adapt to the change.
As the coins with the King's effigy get introduced into circulation, they will coexist with the Queen for the long time, and then at one point it will become a majority of King versus Queen. So Canadians will have the time to get used to the transition.
The coins will begin circulating in early December. Canadian artist Stephen Rosati's portrait of the King was chosen to adorn the coin from 350 submissions. Eventually, Charles's image will also appear on the $20 bill. While the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are in Hamilton. The team left from Winnipeg's airport yesterday afternoon for the Grey Cup, where they'll take on the Montreal Alouettes on Sunday. It's the first time the two teams will square off in the CFL championship game. Winnipeg has been in the Grey Cup for a 4th straight year and is chasing its 3rd win in that time. Tickets for the game are sold out. Well, here in Winnipeg, we're experiencing some warmer temperatures than we're used to this time of year, and that has people getting out and enjoying some activities they don't normally get to do here in November. CBC's Jim Agapito caught up with some golfers taking advantage of the mild weather at the Southside Golf Course. Have a look.
It's the middle of November, and I don't think any Manitoban would have expected to be golfing this late in the season. How does it feel to be golfing in the middle of November?
Feels great. I was kind of missing golf for the past month because I haven't been able to do it, just been busy with sports and school, but I just had a day off today. I was thinking might as well get out here if we have the chance to. I thought I was gonna play worse than I did, honestly, but also it's just nice to get out here because I don't know, it's after a while, it's kind of miss golf a little bit, especially if you do it so much during the summer, it was multiple times a week all summer, and then just had to stop for a month, and then it's nice to be back out here again.
First thing, how does it feel, guys? It's the middle of November and you're golfing. How does that feel to be golfing right now?
It's a beautiful day. I've never golfed this late, and so I have the day off. I might as well come out here and play around. Yeah, it's warm, it's beautiful. Good to be outside.
Since you have a little bit of relief right now, I guess, from the winter and the snow, and you get to play golf, what will you do then the moment the snow falls? Are there any pastimes that you're trying to pick up for winter?
I just play hockey, so there's not a lot of outdoor stuff that I'm looking forward to a freeze up for. But this warm weather has helped me get my yard work done and get the Christmas lights up and stuff, so it's welcome.
Okay, Eric, you're golfing in the middle of November. How does it feel to be golfing in the middle of November?
That's pretty cool. I mean, anytime you can swing the clubs this late into the season, it's nice. It's a beautiful day.
How will you spend, the rest of the winter?
Probably playing hockey. Play men's league, and I coach my little guy's team, so try and get out to the outdoor rinks with him as much as possible and just try and enjoy it.
Okay, the fact that you're open right now in the middle of November, how does that feel?
Yeah, we made the decision last week that we would give it a shot, just weather depending. And Sunday we had our superintendent out here cutting holes for us, and I put the pins in today. We painted the circles, and we're off. Yeah, we want it to be comfortable for the people that are coming to play. If it gets up to 5 during the day, we will probably open, and then anything beyond that, of course, will be open. Yeah, we just kind of take it day by day. If there's snow or rain, it's kind of tough. We don't expect people to come out, but if it gets above 0 and the lows aren't too low overnight, we can get some golfers out here. We'd love to do that, yeah.
Golfing in November. Weather specialist Riley Lachak. I think those guys and many people will take that for now.
Yeah.
But you've got...
If they say, 5 degrees is the threshold for opening the course, and I think I've got a few more days of that yet.
Some people may be calling in sick for the next few days, but unfortunately you do have some snowfall that you need to tell us about as well.
Snowfall in the forecast for southern Manitoba, but we're seeing it in the north right now. We can take a look at satellite radar, and we have a low pressure system over Hudson Bay, and you can see it on satellite here. We have no radar coverage this far north, but this area of low pressure here has been bringing us snowfall warnings to Lynn Lake, Puckatawagan through today. 10 to 15 centimeters of snow in parts of the north. We'll talk what's to come later on. Here in the south, we've seen a nice day today, cloudy with sunny breaks and some clearing just back to the west of the Red River Valley right now. So we should start to see a clearing sky as we head into the evening tonight. So here is that area of low pressure that has been bringing snow to parts of the north. This will move off into Hudson Bay as we get into the morning tomorrow, leaving behind mainly cloudy sky. Could still see some snow early on in the day, overnight into the Churchill and Shamattawa region. Chance of flurries, though, really into the morning tomorrow, still lingering for parts of northern Manitoba. Here in the south, nice sunshine through the day tomorrow. We're going to see a nice above seasonal day once again for us tomorrow here in southern Manitoba. But I want to direct your attention here as we get into Thursday. This, our next weather maker for southern Manitoba. This is an area of low pressure that is moving along the international border, originating in Montana. So by the time we get to the morning commute on Thursday, you can see snow starting to move into the southwest corner of Manitoba. Wet snow, temperature dependent, could see some of this falling, some showers later on in the morning. This moves through the Red River Valley. By the time we get to lunchtime, almost entirely cleared out of the province, just the southeast corner. Still seeing some snow and off into northwestern Ontario through the afternoon. Behind that, more clear skies, more sunshine as we get later into Thursday and into the weekend. In terms of snowfall that is yet to come for northern Manitoba, this is on top of what has already fallen through the day today. So we're looking at another 5, maybe 10 centimeters along the Hudson Bay coast. Lesser amounts back to the west, areas like Lynn Lake, Puckatawagan, Brochet, looking at lesser amounts through the night tonight. This is a Thursday event here, like I mentioned, for southern Manitoba. Generally, I think 1 to 2 centimeters. Could see, I think, melting on contact, really temperature dependent once again, once we get into the daytime. So we'll keep our eye on that as we get into the day on Thursday. In terms of winds, a bit gusty today. We'll see things really lightening up as we get into the morning tomorrow. Starting off southwest winds 10 to 20 in the west, pretty much the same through the Red River Valley. And that's really where we're going to stay through the day tomorrow. So So 7 degrees right now. We got to 10 this afternoon in Winnipeg. We're looking at a low tonight of -3 under a clear sky, -2 first thing in the morning, and then warming up again to 7 degrees in the afternoon. And Brittany, we're looking at a chance of some snow, like I mentioned, for Thursday, and then warm conditions right into the weekend again.
Those temperatures look pretty good for right now, though, Riley.
They do.
Thanks so much. We'll touch base with you a little bit later in the newscast. Well, the family of Vivian Silver, a Jewish-Canadian peace activist from here in Winnipeg, has confirmed she was killed in the Hamas attacks last month. The 74-year-old was born and raised in Winnipeg, but spent much of her life in Israel. Her friends, family, and the Jewish community are mourning her death. CBC's Zubina Ahmed brings you more.
This is where Winnipeg-born peace activist Vivian Silver lived. And on October 7th, she was on the phone with her son when she told him Hamas militants were in her home.
I don't think she's missing. I think she's either dead in her house or being held in Gaza.
That was the last time Jonathan Zygan spoke to his mother. Family feared she was taken hostage. But Monday night, Zygan confirmed to CBC that remains of his mother had been found at her home in kibbutz. Since then, there has been an outpouring of shock and sadness in the community. Silver was born and raised in Winnipeg and lived her adult life in Israel. Gustavo Zentner, the president of the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg, says Silver was a renowned pacifist who tirelessly advocated for peace.
So in a way, Vivian continued her work. She was renowned as a pacifist, as a civilian that had helped build communities, that created single-handedly programs to support Palestinian women and brought together Jewish and Arab women in Jerusalem to a peaceful gathering days before the attack in early October 2023, and only to now pay the ultimate price.
Zentner says his thoughts and prayers are with Silver's family, and plans for a memorial service for Silver in Winnipeg are yet to be announced.
Because we want to allow for family, friends to travel to Winnipeg, maybe return to Canada. And we also want to be mindful of putting together a program that will include people that have worked with Vivian, people whose lives have been positively impacted by Vivian's work, both in Israel and also here in Winnipeg.
Silver moved to Israel almost 50 years ago and is being remembered by her other friends for a lifelong dedication to the cause of peace between Israelis and Palestinians.
That we don't know how to go on without her, but I think that we do, because she, as you said, she had such a wonderful legacy, and her legacy will continue. So she will be with us, but today we're devastated.
Like, what would Vivian want us to do now? I mean, that's sort of what has been going through my head, and it's obvious that what she would want us to do is to raise a voice for all of the civilians who are suffering.
Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Canada's federal health minister is in Winnipeg this week. It will be Minister Mark Holland's first in-person meeting with Manitoba's new health minister, Uzoma Asseguara. Minister Holland joins us live this evening. Good evening, Minister.
Hi, how are you? Good to be here.
I'm great, thank you so much. This will be your first sit down with the minister. What's the top health priority for the Liberals right now?
Well, I'm very much looking forward to meeting with Uzoma and having a conversation around our shared priorities. We as a government have made a really historic investment of $200 billion over the next 10 years. And really talking about what that means for Manitobans. So making sure that we make progress on workforce issues, reducing backlogs, making sure that everyone has access to a family doctor, a relationship with a family doctor, and using family health teams. So really getting us out of these the workforce issues and some of the specific challenges that we have right now. And also talking about upstream, about how we're going to transform our health system and really make sure, because we have one of the best health systems in the world, but we all recognize there are flaws and deficiencies. We really need to make transformation to see it be the best health system in the world.
Minister Holland, while you're here, you're also meeting with healthcare workers, and we know our nurses, healthcare aides, doctors are exhausted, overworked, the system is understaffed. What are you hearing from them about concerns, and how do you plan to address them?
Well, the pandemic was brutally difficult, and particularly for healthcare workers who carried so much during those times, and we're obviously deeply appreciative. But coming out of it, we have all of the demands and all of the residual health issues that have been there, and we've seen real strain on our workforce. And what we've said with these investments is that we're going to partner with provinces to be a huge part of that solution. That's the money that I was talking about in the bilateral agreements we're going to be working on. But also you saw when I was meeting with health ministers out in Halifax from across the country, setting a 90-day service standard for foreign trained credentials so that we can metabolize those folks who are here and make sure that their credentials are recognized as quickly as possible. National licensure so that doctors and nurses can move anywhere across the country without slowdown or without pause of having those credentials recognized, and opening up a number of spaces domestically to make sure that we're having enough students coming out of the system. So there's a lot of things that we're working on in collaboration with provinces and territories to really take the workforce issue on head on. And so I would say to those that have been carrying so much, it has been too much. The pandemic was impossibly hard, but together we're going to get this fixed.
And Minister, how quickly can we start seeing some of these things being implemented? Because we've heard from people about needing those credentials being recognized in other areas so that takes some of that strain off and we can get people working. When can we expect some real movement?
Well, the agreement was just made in Charlottetown around the 90-day service standard for foreign credentials. So I think you're going to see that happen very quickly. I'm here as well to talk to the new health minister. Uzoma and I are going to have a really good conversation around the application of federal funds. This is a very new government here in Manitoba, but the funds are available. We want to see them flow as quickly as possible, and we want to work with the new government and their plans to apply that money. So I think we should see changes here in Manitoba in the immediate future. This is a significant challenge. We're not going to fix it overnight, but we are going to see a positive trajectory and moving towards a position where we're going to be dealing with these immediate workforce issues. And of course, our objective beyond that is really looking downstream at the preventative measures that we can take to improve our health system, how to get data right, interoperability, so that our health systems are speaking appropriately to each other. There's a lot of change that we can do beyond just these workforce issues to improve healthcare for all Canadians and certainly for Manitobans.
Minister Holland, our north has suffered significantly as well. Churchill, Thompson, to name a few areas, they've been plagued with health problems. Finding those doctors, nurses to staff those communities in particular in the north, and also patients that are having to be forced to travel far from their home for care. What can be done to address those problems, and how can the federal government help?
Well, one of the things I'm talking to Minister Main from Nunavut about looking at the workforce potential of folks who live in these communities. We have a situation where we have so many Indigenous peoples who are living in a place where we need healthcare workers. So tapping into that population to look at training folks and how we can engage them meaningfully to be working where they live. We also have to work, as we're working with workforce issues, at finding solutions to get care to where people live and find ways for doctors and nurses to be coming to these communities. And you're quite right, it's not enough that we have doctors, nurses, and facilities if it's impossible for people to get to them. So, working with provinces, a lot of this is provincial jurisdiction, but what you will have seen from us is that we're not talking about jurisdiction, we're talking about trying to find solutions. So we're coming to the table with money, we're coming to the table with best practices. Had a fascinating conversation looking at the possibility of remote medicine and the opportunity that Canada has to really be a leader in that space. And interestingly, there's a lot of interest from those that are interested in space and looking at how we can do a better job of remote medicine in Canada and how we can apply some of those technologies and innovations to healthcare and remote settings as well.
Minister, Manitobans will be looking forward to keeping you accountable to all of those promises as well. Minister Holland, the Federal Health Minister, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for yours.
Refugees in Gaza are facing dangerous conditions as cold winter weather arrives, and the Al-Shifa hospital is surrounded by Israeli forces who say it sits on top of an underground Hamas headquarters. More on that when we come back. As the Israel-Hamas war continues, so does the destruction and suffering in Gaza. Refugees in the south are facing dangerous conditions as wet, cold winter weather arrives. In the north, the key focus of the hardship is the Al-Shifa hospital. It's surrounded by Israeli forces who say it sits on top of an underground Hamas headquarters. And as CBC's Ellen Morrow reports, the situation is desperate. And a warning, some of the images in this story are disturbing.
There are bodies piling up outside Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. More than 100 decomposing here, say doctors, and there's nowhere to put them. Refrigerator trucks aren't working without any fuel. A mass grave is now being dug.
These are innocent people, you've got to remember. 2/3 of the deaths due to injury in Gaza are amongst women and children. It's an absolutely catastrophic situation.
There's been fighting around Al-Shifa for days. Israel says Hamas has a command center in tunnels underneath of it. Washington now says it has intelligence to back up that claim.
Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad uses some hospitals in the Gaza Strip, including the Al-Shifa hospital. Hamas and PIJ members operate a command and control node from Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City. They have weapons stored there.
Hamas and doctors at Al-Shifa deny it. Fears are growing for the premature babies inside Al-Shifa. Doctors there say they're struggling to keep them warm with the hospital out of fuel. Today, Israel's military said it would send mobile incubators to Al-Shifa that it says could be used to move the babies out of the hospital. But there's no details on when they'll get there or if the babies will ever be evacuated. All the while, the fighting in northern Gaza rages on, pushing tens of thousands more out of their homes. They move south where the Israeli military says it's safer, but children are still rushed inside this hospital in Han Yunis, injured in an Israeli airstrike. They want to wipe out Gaza, this man says in the rubble of a building. All these houses were destroyed, with the residents still inside them. In Israel, anguish grows for the more than 230 hostages being held by Hamas. This is the start of a 5-day march from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, pressuring the Israeli government to do more to get them back.
They called an ambulance.
Ilan Zahaya's niece Eden was taken in the October 7th attacks.
It's very, very difficult. It's unbearable. Scratching the walls and tearing the hair, that's where we are. It's terrible.
For Gaza's displaced civilians, there won't be any escape. Many now living in tent cities as the rainy season and colder weather set in. There are fears that in these squalid conditions, disease will spread. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Effects of the war are spilling into Islamic and Jewish communities around the world, including here in Canada. Reports of anti-Semitic and Islamophobic bigotry have increased. A new report on Islamophobia from Canada's Senate makes several recommendations, including calling for action in the classroom. CBC's Deanna Sumanik-Johnson reports.
This university professor has worked with school boards in rural Alberta, using art projects to help fight prejudice against Muslim students.
Female students who are wearing the hijab, a very common racial slur that these students confront in their everyday lives is, why are you wearing this piece of cloth on your head?
She says the Israel-Hamas conflict has upped the intensity.
It is in times of war that you witness a hardening of identities. Everybody becomes aware of, ethnic origins, where they're coming from.
The new Senate report on Islamophobia found that it is a daily reality for many Muslims. One of the report's main recommendations: launch a multimedia campaign and educational resources on Islamophobia that can be incorporated into classrooms. Yet this school board in a Peel district outside of Toronto is the only one in the country to have produced a board-wide strategy on Islamophobia. It includes things like mandatory annual training for teachers on how to be culturally sensitive to Muslim students. But even there, it's unclear whether teachers have yet been trained on the strategy. Asia Khan helped write it, and she says it can't be implemented soon enough.
They had completed the strategy, which was the first step. But now I think community is kind of holding their breath and waiting, right? We want to see kind of the ways in which we move this into action.
The organization she works for noted a significant rise in calls from community members who say they've faced hostility, prejudice, or attacks since October 7th. Some of those calling were parents.
Caseloads have gone, it skyrocketed. In all areas, right? The work that we do in our spaces.
Khan is also working with teacher college students, the future educators, to help support Muslim students. School boards in Toronto and London, Ontario are also about to develop plans to fight Islamophobia. Deanna Sumanik-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
The jury is hearing closing arguments today at the trial of the man accused of killing 4 members of a Muslim family in London, Ontario in 2021. 22-year-old Nathaniel Veltman has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, as well as terror-related charges. But his lawyers say the attack warrants lesser charges. CBC's Thomas Daigle has this report.
For members of the Muslim community who came to court Tuesday, it's been a long 2.5-year wait for this moment, the final chapter in the murder-terror trial of the man who ran over the Afzal family with his truck in London, Ontario.
Hearing gruesome details has been very difficult. Seeing the family, hearing these things firsthand has also been very difficult, and we've been trying to support them as much as we can.
In closing arguments to the jury, the defense presented 22-year-old Nathaniel Veltman as a troubled young man, his lawyers insisting that confession to police he made hours after the attack should not be taken as an admission of guilt.
It was terrorism, but I'm not gonna try to get a lighter sentence by saying it was just murder, not terrorism.
The defense says at that time, Veltman was still in a drug-fueled haze and dealing with several mental disorders. Nate Veltman had no time to deliberate the killings of the Afzal family, lawyer Christopher Hicks told the jury, suggesting they consider lesser charges of manslaughter or second-degree murder.
The penalties are a little bit different in terms of parole eligibility for second-degree murder, and there's more flexible sentencing for a manslaughter charge.
In court, the Crown called Veltman a terrorist, saying with the attack, the accused intended to send this message to Muslims: leave this country or you and your loved ones could be next. Prosecutors again showed the jury pictures from the crash site with a road sign flattened as Veltman drove full throttle.
Veltman doesn't dispute he deliberately ran over the Afzals with his truck. It will be up to the jury to decide what charges he's guilty of based on the evidence. The judge will first have to instruct the jury on how to come to a verdict. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
A collection of art that sought to help boost soldier morale in the Second World War is on display here in Winnipeg. We'll take a closer look at the art for war and peace. That's after the break. Acclaimed Canadian artists wanted to boost soldier morale during the Second World War, and they did it in the best way they knew how: art. It resulted in a very unique collection. Some of that work is on display right now at the Mayberry Fine Art Gallery here in Winnipeg. It's called The Art for War and Peace, an exhibition of Samson Matthew silkscreens. CBC's Jim Agapito visited the gallery and talked to co-owner Bill Mayberry.
Okay, Bill, we're here at the gallery because you have a significant collection. Can you tell me about that?
We name it the Samson Matthew collection. This is a series of silkscreen prints, sometimes called serigraphs, that were brought together by a collaboration of just the right people at the right time during, just at the beginning of World War II. A.Y. Jackson, a prominent member of the Group of Seven, he had this idea that putting art in the places where the men were overseas would make a difference. It would give them a sense of belonging to Canada and what they were really fighting for.
And how significant was it then to have, you know, these great Canadian artists to be part of this, and why did they want to be part of it?
Well, it was highly successful, and in fact, there was as many as 50,000 plus of these serigraphs were sent overseas. It went into the barracks, into mess halls. They specifically wanted them to go in the places where the majority of the soldiers were. They went into embassies around the world. And so it showed Canadian art to Europeans, people who weren't even aware there was such a thing. And even at that time, a lot of Canadians weren't aware of these images as well. So it was a huge morale boost during the Second World War. So this was one of the most complex ones. There was, like I say, there was up to 20 screens went into the making of this. Like all of these would be a separate screen in itself. So that would be one screen which shows this. These colors would be separate. So every little detail would be a separate screen.
It sounds like it's very rare, so how rare of a collection is this, and how much do these cost then?
Well, they're not terribly expensive when as far as art goes. They would start around $1,000. That would be framed, and some of them would go as high as $7,500. So you start studying and you look into the painting. This here is very complex to do in a screen print. And so it was, these people were masters in their craft. So I think, when they were around and they were beat up slightly and they had an old oak frame on them and they looked like yesterday's art, they went ignored. But I think it's to shine a new light on them and the importance of them and how they're, like I say, part of our Canadian art history, and a very affordable part of our Canadian art history.
Weather Update is brought to you by the Art and Beauty of the National Ballet of Ukraine, January 29th at the Burton Cummings Theatre. Tickets at nationalballetukraine.com.
Our Riley Laychuk is back, and Riley, we were talking earlier about just how nice this November weather is. I've still seen people out in shorts, and I know it's Winnipeg and people wear shorts here kind of year round, but really, really nice for November.
Really, really nice temperatures approaching that record territory. Let's take a look at some of the numbers now. So today's forecast high, or today's high temperature in Winnipeg hit exactly 10.0 at the Forks this afternoon. Record high was 16 degrees back in 1939, so about 6 degrees off from that. But our record low, look at this, almost minus 37 back in 2005. So, think warm thoughts if you're not a fan of temperatures like these. Certainly nice that it's a little bit warmer than that. Right now, still 7 degrees at the airport. Keep in mind, our normal high for this time of the year is -2, so quite a bit above seasonal for this time of the year. -4 in Lynn Lake, where we've been seeing some of that snow. Otherwise, dancing around the freezing mark. Here's the remnants of that low pressure system, and we're going to see temperatures pretty close to the freezing mark across northwestern Ontario tonight. -1s and -2s. We'll see a clearing sky through the night tonight. tonight. Same goes for the Red River Valley. Keep in mind, like I said, this -2 is the normal daytime high for this time of the year. So yeah, still above seasonal for this time of the year, even for nighttime lows, which is around -10 for this time of the year. A bit breezy in the west, still -2 in Dauphin, -4 in Brandon overnight tonight. And in northern Manitoba, still dealing with a little bit of snow in the Churchill region, Gillam down toward Island Lake and Thompson. That will taper off as we get through the day tomorrow, but we could see some light snow still through Lynn Lake and Brochet tomorrow. Temperatures around the freezing mark or just above for the most part. Same for southern Manitoba. Beautiful temperatures. 8 in Brandon tomorrow afternoon, 6 in Dauphin, 11 in Morden Winkler. And yeah, gorgeous temperatures again for the southeast, although we won't see the winds that we saw today. It's going to be a lot calmer than we saw through the afternoon today as into tomorrow. And looking into northwestern Ontario, sunshine as well, 5 degrees in Kenora, 9 in Fort Francis, 4 in Red Lake. Temperatures like these, Brittany, look like they will continue over the next few days at least, but then we get a bit of a reality check as we get toward the middle of next week. That's coming up in your 7-day forecast.
All right. Thanks so much, Riley.
Welcome.
Still ahead on the show, award-winning filmmaker and investigative journalist David Rabinovich has a new book out based on the life of his uncle, Morden's William Wolfe Rabin, who had ties to the mob. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. He grew up in Morden, and now award-winning filmmaker and investigative journalist David Rabinovich has a new book out based on the life of his uncle, William Wolfe Rabin. The story is what Hollywood blockbusters are made of, caught between the mob and the feds in a plot to save the casinos in Havana from Castro's revolution. Rabin pulls the biggest money laundering scheme in history. David, thank you so much for joining us. This sounds like quite a story.
Well, it is very cinematic. It's one of the things that attracted me to it. But I had heard a lot about the uncle I never met. There was a lot of myth and lore. He built the first jukebox that could play 30 records, and that was the beginning of it.
Yeah, so it all revolves around the jukebox and a photograph that you found. So tell me how this all started.
Well, it was very unusual in a far-flung but closely knit family to have an uncle that I had never met. And in fact, there were no photos of him around until one day as a teenager, I found a photograph of my uncle with my father, and it looked like a photograph out of something like an old movie like Angels with Dirty Faces or The Roaring Twenties. And there was a pile of money on the table in front of it. So I asked my dad about it, and he said, well, that was in Chicago, and it was when Bill was making money hands over fist with his jukebox. So that sparked my curiosity even more.
So you started doing some research, and tell me, how does your uncle get wrapped up with the mob?
Well, as I began to learn about coin machines, that was unreported income. They didn't necessarily report it to Revenue Canada or the IRS in the US, but what we now call the mob were the racketeers who were the jukebox distributors, and it was their tough guys who would come around to wherever a jukebox was located once a week or twice a week and take all the coins out of it. Maybe 2% for the location, 10% that would be reported, and the rest into their pockets. So they had extraordinary amount of money. In 1958, a congressional committee in the U.S. estimated unreported income at $2.5 billion from coin machines in those days. And the mob was looking to gain control of the means of production as well as distribution. So in fact, it was a racketeer who came to my uncle, who was in the electronics business, and said, well, we have plans for a jukebox, but we think you're the guy who can build it for us.
Wow, and I want to get to our last part here before we run out of time, but your uncle ended up taking the fall for the largest money laundering scheme in history. How did that happen?
Well, this is about 10 years after the jukebox enterprise blew up in a patent case that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And later, in the late 1950s, with Castro's revolution taking hold in Cuba, the mob were looking to protect their interests. They owned all of the casinos in Havana. And as part of a very complex plot, which unfolds in Jukebox Empire, they needed somebody who could take bonds which had been stolen from what was called the biggest bank robbery in the world in Brockville, Ontario, and fungify them, turn them into cash that could be used to pay other thugs to steal guns and fly planes and all of those things. So in effect, my uncle became the financier. And he was the one who went to Europe and dealt with Swiss and German banks to launder this money. That's, in fact, in the court testimony, there was a German banker who came and said, Rabin offered to buy my bank. How could he do that? And his response was, we have unlimited financing. Every coin that goes through every coin machine in the U.S.
Wow, it's an incredible story.
As it turned out, 4 men were invited, and as he later told another family member, somebody had to take the fall. So he's the one who fell on his sword.
Well, David, I can't wait to one day watch this movie or mini-series, but right now we'll just have to take it in the form of your words in the book. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me on the program.
Still ahead, Riley Lachak is back with your 7-day forecast, and we'll have your daily lift. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Well, as mentioned, another above seasonal day on the way for tomorrow. 7 degrees, a mainly sunny sky, windy conditions, and some wet snow coming our way on Thursday here for the Red River Valley. Another sunny day on the way for Friday. Things above seasonal still as we head into the weekend. Then we could see some more snow coming our way for Monday, and then temperatures start to cool off a bit towards seasonal by the time we get to the middle of next week. A breezy 0 on the way for Tuesday. A new coming-of-age tradition is catching on in Japan.
Pet owners are taking their 4-legged family members to a local temple for blessings, typically given to young children. Here's your daily lift. Pet parents dress up their fur babies in their finest to attend the local shrine and receive a blessing from a Shinto priest. Prayers are said for health and happiness, and wishes cast for a prosperous future.
Now, this particular shrine, southwest of Tokyo, established a specific site for ritual ceremonies for pets in 2012. About 120 furry friends are expected to participate in this year's festivities.
Look at those outfits. I love it. They're showing up in their Sunday best.
Yes, exactly.
Right? To come and get their blessings. That's amazing. You know what? I bet you there would be lines here if we did that as well.
I'm sure there would be.
You could dress up your pet, come get a blessing. It's like for the new year, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe a photo while you're at it.
Right? Something to look forward to. Thank you so much. We'll see you back here tomorrow evening. Have a wonderful night.